tonight. Why Mark Norman was cleared.
There's no reasonable prospect of conviction.
CBC News finds out what changed the Crown's mind, but will it close the political case?
Where do violent Canadian criminals get their guns? It's not just a border issue.
Can we have a little peek at him? We just can't quite see his face.
And saying hello to baby Archie, the royal with the name that's got everyone talking. This is The National.
And we begin with breaking news out of Ottawa, where police say one of the country's top judges is missing. Clément Gascon joined the Supreme Court of Canada 5 years ago. The 59-year-old recently announced that he would be leaving the bench in September. Police say his family is concerned for his well-being tonight. Katie Simpson joins us from outside the Supreme Court in Ottawa with what more we know about this. Katie?
Well, Ottawa police were notified sometime this afternoon that Clément Gascon, as you mentioned, a Supreme Court Justice of Canada, was last seen leaving this area, the Supreme Court, which is behind me. His family was concerned, and that's when Ottawa police decided to issue a missing persons bulletin. And we are eagerly awaiting some sort of new information from Ottawa police to provide some sort of update on this situation. Of course, this is certainly an unusual situation. The alert came out from Ottawa police just before 8 o'clock Eastern tonight, and Ottawa police have been doing some sort of searches in and around the area, but we're waiting for more details as to what exactly is going on. As you mentioned, the 59-year-old was set to retire this fall. He served on the Supreme Court of Canada for about 5 years, appointed by Stephen Harper, and again was planning to depart the country's top court this fall. So any new information, Ian, as soon as we get new information, we of course will bring it to you immediately about how the Ottawa police search is going.
And Katie, as I understand it, just one quick question. Police did say that they don't believe foul play is suspected here, but that he's missing and that his family's concerned.
The initial information from Ottawa police is, again, that they don't think there's any sort of crime here. They are looking for more information. And then again, yes, his family reached out. They are concerned, and that is what prompted this missing persons bulletin.
All right. Thank you, Katie. Katie Simpson reporting for us from Ottawa.
Okay, well, as dramas go, this criminal case I'm about to tell you about seemed to have it all. A highly decorated senior military official, allegations of leaked information, and a political backstory that could explode just in time for a federal election. But it all came to an abrupt end when today the charges against Vice Admiral Mark Norman were dropped. Now, CBC News has learned why they were dropped, and we'll get to that in a moment. But first, to understand any of this, you have to look back to 2015. Stephen Harper's government awarded a $700 million contract to Quebec's Davie shipyard to convert a commercial ship into a Navy supply ship. Shortly after the new Liberal government came into power, it quietly paused to review the deal. But when information was leaked to a reporter that that contract was on ice, the feds backtracked and approved it. But where did the leak come from? The Liberals had the RCMP investigate. That's when Mark Norman, the military's second in command, comes into the picture. The RCMP alleged that for more than a year, he had leaked cabinet secrets to, quote, unauthorized parties, including Davie. Norman was suspended and eventually charged with breach of trust. So why today's stunning reversal? Why did prosecutors let this high-profile case go? Murray Brewster has followed this trial from the very beginning, and he's got the answer.
How do you feel this morning, Vice Admiral?
The case against Vice Admiral Mark Norman began to collapse in March, all thanks to evidence dug up by his defense team and presented to the Crown.
It was important to us. We had some information. We didn't have the entire information.
The Crown refused to specify what that information was, but said it meant there was little chance of conviction. Now, CBC News has learned some of what that was. Norman's lawyers interviewed former Conservative cabinet ministers and staffers, people not questioned by the RCMP or the Crown. What they found was Norman, in dealing with Davie Shipbuilding, worked in close cooperation with former Prime Minister Stephen Harper's office, something that helped change the context of the allegations. There was also information the government had in its possession about the shipbuilding deal.
It should have been handed over. It should have been handed over to the RCMP. It should have been handed over to the prosecution. It was not. As to the why, I don't know. I'll leave you to answer that.
One person Norman is alleged to have leaked to says the prosecution was a travesty of justice.
There'll be a time, Murray, to chat about other things as this gets more explored. Today I want to talk about the fact that justice has been served and Mark Norman is innocent, as we've always said he is.
It is a bittersweet vindication over 2 years after the RCMP first raided his home.
I am confident that at all times I acted with integrity, I acted ethically, and I acted in the best interest of the Royal Canadian Navy, the Canadian Forces, and ultimately the people of Canada.
The Chief of the Defence Staff said tonight Norman will be welcome back. The question is, what will he do? His job has been given to someone else. Murray Brewster, CBC News, Ottawa.
So that's the end of the trial, but not the end of the story. Not according to Mark Norman and his lawyer, and certainly not according to the opposition, who had some pointed questions today. David Cochran looks at that angle for us.
Oral questions, questions orales.
The Crown dropped its prosecution of Mark Norman, but the Conservatives continued theirs of Justin Trudeau.
Why is it that anyone who says no to this Prime Minister ends up with a target on their back?
We have had documents withheld, we've had witnesses silenced, and we have seen a personal attack on the reputation of a revered public servant.
They insist this was a vendetta, as much a persecution as prosecution, which Trudeau flatly denies.
The process involved in a public prosecution like this is entirely independent of my office. It's an independent process, and we have confidence in the work done by the Director of Public Prosecution.
What can you tell us about it? Trudeau is backed by the Director of Public Prosecutions, Kathleen Roussel, who issued a statement saying no other factors were considered in this decision, nor was there any contact or political influence. That's the same Kathleen Roussel who is prosecuting SNC-Lavalin on bribery and fraud charges, despite government efforts to get the company a deferred prosecution agreement.
No pressure, no discussions. Absolutely not. They made their decision without any influence.
No influence, but a definite measure of relief. This spares the government a potentially embarrassing trial, with well-known Liberals on the witness stand in the run-up to the fall election.
Mr. Speaker, sunshine is the best disinfectant. Canadians deserve the truth.
With no trial, the NDP called for an inquiry. The Liberals wouldn't do that, but did say they'd pick up Norman's tab.
Regarding Vice Admiral Norman's request to have his legal fees paid for as relates to this case. I agree with this, Mr. Speaker, and have authorized it.
Paying the legal costs, hoping to avoid the political ones. David Cochran, CBC News, Ottawa.
Okay, Ian, back to you, and turning to a courtroom proceeding that did go forward today.
Andrew, the sentencing hearing has begun for Mohammed Shamji, the Toronto neurosurgeon's crime, murdering his wife. Shocking to some, but not uncommon. The murder of family physician Alana Frick fits a pattern of violence in this country. Of every violent crime reported to police in 2017, 30%, nearly 1/3, was committed by an intimate partner. According to the Canadian Women's Foundation, a woman is killed by her partner every 6 days. That Shamji beat and strangled Frick to death in 2016, that he's receiving what's described as a life sentence, neither is in dispute. The question is how long before he's eligible to apply for parole. Both the Crown and defense agree that should be no less than 14 years. Joanna Remiliotis tells us what was said in court today was met with tears and rage.
The children can barely talk about their mother. It's still too hard. Today was a glimpse into a family's shattered lives. In court, Anna Frick spoke first as her daughter's killer stared ahead. The nightmare that began that day has never ended and will never end until the day I die. He has destroyed all our lives forever. The children still cannot bear to have their mother mentioned because it is so painful to them. As Mother's Day approaches, she went on, sobbing. Instead of making cards and trinkets for their mother, they lay flowers on her grave. Alana Frick's body was found in a suitcase. It had been dumped in a river north of Toronto, her hair cut off, her face so swollen. When police asked her parents to identify her, they barely could. The horror of having to identify my daughter after her brutal murder, when she was virtually unrecognizable, will haunt me forever. Court also heard from Frick's friends and colleagues who described her as a rising star, a devoted doctor and mother. Few knew behind the happy facade the abuse was escalating, that she intended to divorce Shamji. He admits he killed her days after he found out. While no one condones his crime, defense also read out 14 letters of support from Shamji's family, colleagues, and former patients. It was hard for the Fricks to listen to, even harder when Shamji addressed the court, turning to apologize to them. "I've thought back to that night," he said. "I should have killed myself and not Alana." Frick's sister muttered, "Yes, you should have." He went on, "To our children, Yasmin, Faiza, and Marius, I have devastated your lives. I have hurt you immeasurably. I can only say I'm sorry."
Just a ploy, just a show, you know.
After court, Frick's sister Caroline Lakich was still seething.
The wrong life was taken. You should have taken your own. You took a valuable life. If you didn't like yours, why kill somebody else? You're the menace to society.
As for his apology,
it's bullshit. I don't believe it. He's only sad because he got caught. He's not sad for my sister. He's not sad at all.
Shamji's sentence will be handed down tomorrow. Among them, no one expects it will bring justice. Joanna Rumiliotis, CBC News, Toronto.
A Christian Pakistani woman who fears for her life has found refuge in Canada. Asia Bibi's case has garnered worldwide attention, casting an unflattering light on Pakistan's blasphemy laws and inciting mob violence. Her trouble started as a squabble with neighbors, which spiraled out of control. Muslim women working in the fields objected to Bibi using a shared drinking cup. She was accused of insulting the Prophet Muhammad, arrested, and eventually sentenced to death. Bibi spent 8 years on death row before being acquitted by Pakistan's top court last year. She's been in hiding ever since. As Salima Shivji tells us, getting her safely to Canada wasn't easy.
As news broke that Asia Bibi was finally out of Pakistan and here in Canada, the Liberal government wasn't saying much.
Obviously, there are sensitive privacy issues and security issues on this, and unfortunately, I can't comment at this time.
We understand that the court decisions have been upheld and that she will be returning, will be in a safe place.
A stark contrast to the very public greeting when Canada offered refuge to Saudi teenager Rahaf Mohammed. In Asia Bibi's case, it's believed much was done through back channels and quiet talks among several countries.
Canada made this offer, and we felt it was right and appropriate that we supported the offer that Canada had made.
The ongoing concern, how to keep her safe. Two Pakistani politicians who stood beside her over the years fighting against their country's blasphemy laws were assassinated. Shahbaz Bhatti, Pakistan's then Minister of Minorities, was one of them.
It's no word to express my feelings. It's hard.
His brother Peter has lived in Canada for years.
I feel that his sacrifice not go in vain and it's bring a fruit. When I see that Asia Bibi set free, and especially in Canada where we are living, this is my home country now, so I feel proud.
He calls it a bold step and doesn't worry about a possible retaliation against Canada.
Sent this letter to Justin Trudeau.
For those who've been following the case closely, petitioning the Prime Minister, the guess is the government's reluctance to talk is part of a deal with Islamabad.
Something that the Pakistani government would have asked the Canadian government to do, not to crow about it.
So no public displays this time. Asia Bibi is now with two of her daughters in an undisclosed Canadian city, adjusting to freedom and a new reality. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Ottawa.
And we have an update to that breaking story we're following tonight from Ottawa. Katie Simpson joins us from outside the Supreme Court. Katie?
Ian, we can confirm that the missing Supreme Court Justice Clement Gascon has been found. Ottawa police just put out a statement saying he is safe. An urgent missing persons bulletin was put out just before 8 o'clock Eastern this evening, and that's when police say they had a phone call from a concerned family member. He was last seen leaving this area around the Supreme Court early in the afternoon. However, there was some concern from family members that they did not know where he is. Now, Gascon is 59 years old, and he's set to retire from the Supreme Court this fall, citing personal and family reasons. He is a member of the Supreme Court and had been there for 5 years, appointed by Stephen Harper, and has been on the Supreme Court for 5 years. But again, we can now confirm Ottawa police just putting out a statement saying that he has been found safe, and there will be no further updates on this story. Ian.
So still lots of questions about the last few hours, but the bottom line, as you say, found safe. Thank you, Katie. Katie Simpson in Ottawa.
Thanks.
Some of the other stories we're following tonight on The National, including the latest developments in the arrest of Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou. Her lawyers telling a Vancouver court today her extradition case should be thrown out.
It stated that the political factors at play during the extradition process may lead to serious violation of justice.
Meng is accused of violating U.S. trade sanctions and was arrested at Vancouver's airport in December at the request of U.S. authorities. Her lawyers have argued that comments by Donald Trump indicate the case is politically motivated. Interestingly, the U.S. Senate passed a resolution today praising the Canadian government for its conduct during the case.
Today I'm announcing details of the transformation agreement that will benefit the Oshawa employees, our Oshawa community and the Canadian auto sector.
That announcement was a $170 million investment in the General Motors plant in Oshawa. GM had previously said the facility would close by the end of this year, but now the site will transition from vehicle assembly to other operations. It's expected to save 300 of the 2,500 jobs at the plant.
Prince Harry and Meghan introduced their baby boy to the world today, but it was pretty quiet for a royal debut. They chose to keep the moment to a very small group of media. And later, they announced their son's name as well. Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor. Thomas Daigle takes us through the day and what people think of the name.
In the grandeur of Windsor Castle, this baby's big reveal was meant to be as low-key as can be. The star of the show sleeping through it all.
He has the sweetest temperament. He's really calm and...
I don't know where he gets that from.
Yeah.
Doting dad Harry holding his baby so close, photographers had to ask to get a good view.
Can we have a little peek at him? We just can't quite see his face.
The newborn wrapped in the same English brand of shawl that's been worn by royal babies for 70 years. Yes, that's baby Harry, sporting the same look and held the same way by his late mother, Diana. Today, this child kept royal watchers guessing as to whether he inherited his father's famous red hair.
His looks are changing every single day.
It was only later that they announced his name, Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor. Perhaps unusual for royals, but Archie is actually one of the most popular boy names in England.
We never expected them to be traditional.
Archie's a lovely British name, and Harrison sounds American, so a nice compromise.
I think it's really important that they live their lives the way they want to.
Mountbatten Windsor is the name created when the Queen and Prince Philip got married. But this royal won't be known as His Royal Highness.
They don't want Archie to go forwards into the world with the burden sometimes that comes with having an HRH or a title attached to a royal child. So he's probably going to have much more freedom than any other royal child that's gone before him.
The new parents introduced Archie to the Queen and Philip, pictured with Meghan's mother, Doria Ragland, as well. Just 2 days old and already causing a stir with nothing but a name. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, London.
I will say the name is growing on me. Still ahead on The National. Russia's newest propaganda tool right on track. Chris Brown goes aboard the trophy train.
Plus, part 3 of our series on guns in Canada goes in-depth on smuggling.
But first, Canadian doctors changed his life with the country's first ever face transplant. But their work did not end when he left the operating table.
Yeah, it was a big year. It was a challenging year, but it was an inspiring year also.
Catching up a year after a medical first. Next.
Sunshine. For nearly 3 months now, Heather and Jean Irwin have gone through pain and heartache because their pet dog was stolen. Sunshine. The Irwins have spent $1,400 on ads in newspapers, put out over 200 pictures, and distributed dozens of posters, all in hope of finding their dog. So far, nothing's turned up, and Jean Irwin thinks it's the work of dog nappers.
I have to be convinced that there's a strong likelihood because she was sitting in front of the house. It was cold out. She only stays for a few minutes and she comes back to the door and wants in. She never came back to the door. She was last seen sitting in the driveway looking up and down the street. And that's the last we saw of her.
Animal welfare officials think too many dogs like these have been mysteriously disappearing, so they put out warnings, watch out for dog nappers. In the Newmarket area, 4 dogs have vanished in just a few months, and in Toronto, nearly 500 dogs were reported missing last year, and few have been recovered. Again, dog nappers are suspected.
We do have some evidence that dog napping does occur. I've had a number of calls through to the shelter that where people indicate that their animals had been stolen and ask for assistance on how to find them.
In the U.S., dog napping is a multi-million-dollar business. An undercover camera taped these pictures at an animal auction where many stolen dogs are sold for furs, for breeding, and for testing in labs. Investigators also found huge farms in Pennsylvania where stolen dogs are bought for $10 apiece and then sold to labs, breeders, or pet shops for $200 each. Around here, the biggest targets for dog nappers appear to be purebreds like these: Yorkshire Terriers, Maltese, and Cocker Spaniels. Too many of them are disappearing without a trace.
It leads one to suspect that there are dog nappers at work that possibly are driving along, see a purebred dog, that they know they have a use for it, stop and pick it up. But as I say, it's very difficult to prove because the animal never resurfaces.
Dog nappers, it's believed, use unmarked vans and work mostly in the middle of the night to avoid detection. And that's why there have been no major arrests here yet, like there have been in the U.S. But animal welfare investigators feel dog nappers are definitely here and advise dog owners to keep their pets close to home.
A year ago, Maurice Desjardins became the recipient of Canada's first face transplant. He'd been very badly hurt in a hunting accident. But one doctor was convinced he could help. And after finding a donor and prepping for months, he did. But even though the surgery worked, Desjardins was not out of danger. There was still a risk his body would reject the transplant. Well, our colleagues at the Radio-Canada Current Affairs program Découverte told us that story. And tonight, Charles Tisser has a follow-up with the man himself.
Vivre avec un nouveau visage. Comment ça se passe?
Oh, stop. Calme-le. Déjà, c'est mieux. Sorry? Yeah, it was a big year. It was a challenging year, but it was an inspiring year also.
Est-ce qu'une chance qu'elle était là?
So, in our experience with the other 40 or so that have been done in the world, it's exactly what's happened with most of those patients. So I speak to those teams in the States and in France, and they joke, they say, well, you still have your hair, we lost our hair. So things are going relatively well on our side, but it's a normal experience that first year to have these ups and downs.
The worst case scenario was avoided. Maurice Desjardins' immune system did not reject his new face. But that victory comes with a price. He's vulnerable to even the slightest infection because of the immunosuppressants he takes.
Maurice, tu fais pas tes exercices par exemple? Je le vois.
Non.
Je le vois. Et c'est parce que ta bouche était ouverte à 3 mm, maintenant c'est à 2 cm.
Pourquoi vous avez cessé vos exercices?
J'étais découragé, Maurice. C'est ça que c'était.
It's like when you have a cast on your wrist. If you don't move your wrist for a month, it's going to be stiff. Ouvre la bouche. Ferme. So it's been around 4 months where he stopped his exercises, and we've seen that he's not able to close his mouth the way he was able to, but I know he'll get it back.
3 major infections left him hospitalized for a total of 10 weeks. It all came to a head in March with a serious intestinal infection.
C'est quand même une job 24 sur 24. Vraiment, là.
Et vous avez donc même cessé de travailler, je pense, pour s'occuper de
J'ai pas le
Maurice.
choix.
That job loss has hurt them financially. What's more, for a year now, every week, Gaetan has to do several back and forths between the rehabilitation center, their home, and the hospital.
And I didn't realize we didn't have any support, financial support for these patients.
Et malgré tout ça, est-ce que vous regrettez votre décision?
Non.
Ça vaut toujours la peine.
Ouais. Oh, yeah, ouais.
Everything about that story, Andrew, so extraordinary. Still ahead on The National, when the gunmen stormed their school, they were ready. Heartbreaking accounts of students involved in yesterday's shooting in Colorado in our moment.
But first, we continue our in-depth series on guns in this country. Tonight, how illegal guns get in.
They hide them in cars and in panels in their cars, maybe on them, all kinds of, they're ingenious, to be honest, the way they've come up with hiding.
Toronto, in fact, more than any other center in Canada, can truly be called Cocaine City.
This is the major battlefield in the war of wits between the cocaine smuggler and the authorities. Toronto International Airport Customs. Last year, more cocaine was seized here than anywhere else in the country, over 400 pounds. Completely in. These are the trophies of the battle. False bottom suitcases, body vests, boots, scuba tanks. All ingenious hiding places that weren't ingenious enough to fool officials. Brian Bavis is a corporal with the drug squad at the airport.
I would estimate that if we're getting 2 to 3%, we'd be doing well.
RCMP Superintendent Donald Heaton.
Well, I think we're seeing an increase in the amount of cocaine coming into Toronto. It may well be because we have a lot of flights direct from South America here. Toronto itself, I think, is a fair user population. I would think last year probably Ontario, and no doubt Toronto, saw half of the cocaine in Canada used here.
Small quantities of cocaine that are put into condoms and then swallowed is the most difficult smuggling method to detect. But it is also the most dangerous. If just one condom breaks while it is in your system, it's certain death within an hour. But the profit for some is apparently worth the risk. Consider this. In the mountains, enough coca leaves to make a kilo of cocaine sell for $250. The refined paste sells for $5,000. By the time the paste is made into a 100% pure powder, that same kilo sells for $20,000. Just by making the trip to Toronto, the kilo doubles in value. It is now worth $40,000. In Toronto, wholesalers add other substances like milk sugar or Novocaine. It's called cutting, and it stretches the amount of the drug the wholesaler can sell. Our kilo is now only 50% pure, but it has doubled in price again. It's now worth $80,000.
Those people dealing in cocaine, for the most part, could be called entrepreneurs. They can go down to South America and bring back in one shipment enough to make a $30,000 to $40,000 profit on one shipment.
Cocaine is to Toronto what heroin is to Vancouver. Toronto is the cocaine capital of Canada. 1 gram, a few snorts, costs $130 to $180. In return, the user gets the classic effects of a stimulant: euphoria, cheerfulness, self-confidence, increased mental activity.
more energy, a faster heartbeat, and more awareness. The effects of one sniff last 20 to 30 minutes. The high is good, so good that once you're down, you want to get right back up. For some, cocaine is in. Classy. Nicknamed the champagne of drugs, cocaine is often found where the beautiful people are. If you have good connections, you'll spend more money for the drug, but the cocaine will be purer. This Toronto musician has used cocaine.
You don't have people on Yonge Street walking up going, want to buy a gram of coke? I mean, they'll offer you acid or pot or something, but I think that also has to do with the price.
The police say it's just getting the tip of the iceberg, the snow on the top of the mountain, so to speak. That's because it is used privately, mostly by people without a criminal record. In other words, people the police wouldn't suspect.
If cocaine was more accessible than it is now, would it become our worst drug problem?
If it were legal the way alcohol is and were similar in price, I can well see that it could easily become the major drug problem.
Guns are killing Canadians at a rate not seen in a decade, and police believe about half of the guns used to commit crimes are smuggled from outside the country. Our special series on gun violence continues tonight with a look at that illegal pipeline. The U.S. has roughly half the world's civilian-owned firearms, hundreds of millions of guns, and what's sitting between those guns and Canada? The world's longest undefended border. Terrence McKenna shows us what that means.
The Ambassador Bridge between Detroit and Windsor, Ontario is one of the busiest border crossings in the country. Canadian Border Services has just been given a large infusion of funding to target our rapidly increasing problem: gun smuggling. Across the country last year, they seized 751 illegal guns, but they know that many more are getting through and contributing to gun violence. Superintendent Jason Crowley of the Windsor Police says gun trafficking is driven by the lucrative market in Canada for unlicensed firearms.
You will see a firearm purchased in the States for potentially, I don't know, $200, $300, and they'll go in the streets for $3,000, $3,500. So very lucrative for the people that are involved in these kind of activities. They hide them in cars and in panels in their cars, maybe on them, all kinds of, they're ingenious, to be honest, the way they've come up with hiding.
If stopping guns at busy border crossings is tough, imagine the challenge in remote areas like the Quebec-Vermont border. Here, the frontier is often marked with a pylon in the middle of a field and a slash cut through the woods that goes for miles and miles.
There's an issue here, so then we started increasing how many agents we had.
U.S. Border Agent Bradley Curtis brought us to a remote spot where you can see how easy it is to sneak across.
So this is the border right here. Pretty much everything on this side, this is the United States. Once you cross this old fence, everything on this side, that's up in Canada.
I'm kind of surprised. What is border security along the Vermont-Quebec border? Are there motion detectors? What is it that's along the border to protect the border at this point?
We do have sensors, we do have camera, we have technology that helps us monitor the border area.
One of the most remarkable gun trafficking plots in these parts began between the neighboring towns of Derby Line, Vermont and Stansted, Quebec, which share many facilities, including the famous Haskell Free Library that actually straddles the borderline. By tradition, Canadians are allowed to cross over to the U.S. side to enter the library without clearing customs.
And if you go in there, you can see this line that separates the two countries, separates the Opera House upstairs. There's books on the Canadian side. They get checked out on the American side, so very unique situation.
Is it a tricky thing for border services to handle?
It is, yes. There's a lot of these strange anomalies across the northern border. This happens to be one of them that we have to work with.
In 2011, 34-year-old career criminal Alex Blackos from Montreal came up with a clever plan to take advantage of the unique library.
What he was doing was basically, he ended up recruiting these co-conspirators. And what they did is they were taking money, his money, and going down to Florida to buy weapons down in the Tampa area.
He had arranged to rendezvous at the library with his co-conspirators. The accomplices, a man and a woman, entered the library from the U.S. side without having to clear customs. The man went to the washroom and deposited a backpack containing 10 handguns in the wastebasket there. Mr. Vlachos entered the library from the Canadian side and retrieved the gun bag from the washroom. Vlachos and his accomplices both left the library going in separate directions without raising the suspicion of the U.S. Border Patrol parked nearby. A few weeks later, Vlachos repeated the trick with 10 more guns in a backpack. This time, the Border Patrol became suspicious and stopped the American accomplices as they departed the library.
Something's not right here. You're from Florida, you're in a rental car. Why you at the Haskell Library? That information was documented, and basically there was kind of one of our building blocks going forward that helped the overall investigation.
The gun smugglers had to come up with a new plan. This time they focused on a remote area 30 kilometers east of Stansted at a place called Wallace Pond. Alexis Vlachos had his American girlfriend drop him off near the border, where he hoped to cross undetected into the United States.
With his criminal history and the fact that he's a Canadian citizen, he was basically not allowed to make a legal entry to the United States. So the only way for him to get into the United States was to illegally enter.
His girlfriend cleared customs, then picked him up on the U.S. side. The couple drove off to her hometown of Tampa, Florida, to buy more guns. This was to be their big score. Vlachos had his friends legally buy 34 handguns in Tampa. Days later, he was able to cross the border at the same spot carrying the guns. He said he did his best to follow the water's edge, but he got lost. He eventually made it to Canada. His girlfriend picked him up, and they both traveled on to Montreal. His border crossings into and out of the United States went completely undetected.
I've been with the United States Border Patrol for almost 25 years. We have 295 miles of border. We have just over 300 agents that are out on the road. We can always use more personnel. We can always use more technology. We do a pretty good job detecting it. We're not really at all places at all times.
Montreal police later found some of Vlachos' guns during drug raids, and U.S. authorities were able to trace them, first to his American girlfriend and then to him. He pled guilty in the U.S. for illegally trafficking 104 firearms and served almost 2 years in a Montreal jail. His Canadian lawyer, Eric Sutton, is not surprised by how easy it was to sneak across the border.
If that's really what you want to do, I think there are multiple opportunities geographically to take advantage of this border. And there is some surveillance, but they can't possibly control every linear inch of this border. It's impossible. It's inconceivable.
You know, they're talking about a handgun ban in Canada now, an assault weapons ban. What do you think that would do to the situation of the border?
You know, hard to say, but human behavior would lead that, would lead someone to conclude that if it's easier and cheaper to get it somewhere else, they might go that route.
There's money to be made.
Yes, sir.
They're going to try to get it across the border.
Yes, sir.
Back on the Windsor-Detroit border, police came across an even more devious gun trafficking scheme, dreamed up, they say, by small-time Canadian gangster Lamar Porter. He would buy guns in the U.S. and hide them in gun socks along with a GPS tracking device. He would cruise the parking lots of Detroit shopping malls looking for cars of Canadian cross-border shoppers and hide the guns inside their bumpers. The cross-border shoppers would then return to Canada along the Ambassador Bridge, completely unaware of the guns they were transporting. Guided by the tracking device, Porter would then go to their Windsor homes and retrieve the guns in the middle of the night. Eventually, police discovered the gun smuggling route through wiretaps of Toronto gangsters who were buying the guns. They followed the gangsters to this Windsor club, where Porter was photographed conducting his gun sale transactions. They were all arrested.
Generally, how do smugglers get caught?
I think intelligence is a big part of it. You know, people talking, right? That's part of it. You know, disgruntled partners, friends, criminals, that kind of thing.
If somebody gets caught and rats out their partners.
Yeah, that's no honor among thieves, they say, right?
Gun traffickers frequently try to grind off the serial numbers from weapons to prevent tracing, but police are often able to detect the numbers anyway.
This is on the polymer part of the firearm, so they could sand it, they could grind it, but a lot of these guns they're ingrained in the body of the gun, in the integrity of the gun. That's where they're recovered. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. So.
These are all semi-automatic firearms. They'll fire as fast as you can pull the trigger. They'll fire.
While police find new ways to trace guns, criminals are coming up with new ways to obtain weapons like this.
Hell yeah.
Edmonton police recently found handguns being illegally converted into fully automatic machine pistols, some of which can fire over 30 bullets in 2 seconds. Ontario police found small-scale manufacturers assembling guns from easily obtainable parts, weapons that would be totally untraceable.
To be able to find this group that's manufacturing and distributing is actually quite unique and is a big deal.
Near Orillia, Ontario, gun store owner Wes Winkle says that key parts of weapons can now be made with 3D printers.
Yeah, if you have a polymer injection machine or a 3D printer nowadays, this type of component is not a hard thing to manufacture. You can produce them at high volumes for a relatively little cost. And when they're manufactured, there's no tracing or no numbers put on them at all. And therefore we get the term ghost guns or what are being assembled as criminal element firearms.
You know, they used to say that every gun told a story. Not so much anymore.
Not so much anymore.
Another method of gun trafficking in Toronto involves what is called straw buying. One university student with a gun license bought 22 weapons in 16 weeks, most from the same store in Toronto, then sold them to criminals. No one at the store or at the Canadian Firearms Office raised any alarm about his suspicious behavior. Wes Winkle doesn't see straw buying as a big problem.
So straw purchasing is a hot button topic, and you know, it's one of those things where you know, there's been some instances, however minuscule they are, but there has been some where there's been people hired to get a firearms license and then go out and purchase firearms with that license for the criminal element.
Minuscule. I saw various cases where a guy goes in and buys 47 guns, and the gun store owner doesn't report them, and the RCMP doesn't seem to do anything about it.
You know, at face value, you say that seems to be ludicrous that it's possible that could happen, and you know, for the most part, when you see that it's been happening through purchases at multiple locations.
I'm asking you now from the point of view of gun salespeople. Shouldn't that trigger a common sense alarm?
You do understand, though, that at every type of retail store, there could be as many as 25 different employees running the counter, and if you're coming in at different times and different things, it's difficult at the retail level to remember every face and every name. The industry was quite surprised to find out that that's not something that would have been flagged at the Canadian Firearms Registry. We kind of expected that would be the case.
While police and border security put a great deal of effort and money into countering illegal weapons, the truth is that as long as there is a market, the guns will keep crossing the US-Canada border. A greater challenge is to address the demand from Canadian buyers. Terence McKenna, CBC News, Windsor.
Next in our Guns in Canada series, stories of personal loss to gun violence and the mothers who are working to change their communities. Watch for it in the days ahead on The National.
Workers are still weaving their way through its iron web, but when the 15-story dome is finished, it will be wrapped around the world's largest theater screen. Thousands of visitors will be marching up the stairs to get their first view of Expo, 1 full year before the fair begins. And here's the kind of thing they'll see inside.
Cascade Range of Washington looked like this in May 1980.
This is an Omnimax film. Expo's having its own $2 million movie made for what it says is Canada's first Omnimax theater. The large screen is supposed to make you feel like you're part of the action. It doesn't translate well into television, but no doubt the crowds that pass through for Expo will be impressed. But what about after the fair? Seattle's Omnimax Theater is not exactly playing to sell out crowds. Last winter, its owners closed up entirely. This year, they hope to stay open at least through part of the rainy season. Seattle's Omnimax is on the waterfront. Its managers think they'd do better if they'd locate it elsewhere where people would notice it, or if it was part of a science exhibit.
And I feel that the placing of the theater is really, really important, and I think that joining with a science museum helps people to realize that it is a scientific, technological, educational sort of thing, rather than a tourist attraction.
Our Dome Theater will attract tourists during the fair, but this $20 million building is here to stay, one of the few permanent buildings at the site. No one knows what its future will be after Expo.
Do you know who's going to take it over afterwards, any of that sort of thing?
I don't think there's any plan for that. I do not know the answer to that.
Ron Woodall is Expo's creative director. It's his job to plan for the fair, not for after. Trouble is, after Expo doesn't seem to be anybody's job. The city was asked if it would manage it.
Well, I think there's the old story about white elephants, you know. I mean, you give somebody a marvelous present that they can't really afford, and then that's a problem. We're very cautious about taking on another theater of any kind because we have a substantial amount of money invested in theaters and a fair amount of cost to operate them. So we have not said that we would take it on. We would be willing to lease it to somebody else that does want to run it as a public facility.
The people at the planetarium were asked if they'd like to move in, but they estimate it would cost $9 million to make the move. $9 million the planetarium doesn't have. The Arts and Science Center was approached too, but people here are planning to move to one of the other permanent Expo buildings. No takers yet, and we're back to the problem of what to do with this $20 million building once the fair ends. Creative director Ron Woodall might have found himself a job beyond 1986.
I'm certain that a building this handsome and in that location must have just tremendous uses in the future. I know that would be a simple matter.
Tomorrow marks the 74th anniversary of the Nazi defeat in Russia. Victory Day in that country has become a huge holiday in celebration of Russia's military strength. But this year it's being celebrated with a modern conflict in mind, Russia's recent military intervention in Syria. Chris Brown explains why in tonight's dispatch from Yaroslavl, Russia.
The city of Yaroslavl, over 1,000 years old, on Russia's mightiest river, the Volga, is famous for its stunning, colorful church domes. But on this day, it's the city's main train station that's the center of attention. This is the Syria Breakthrough Train. It's a traveling exhibition of Russian war trophies from its 5-year campaign in Syria. Russia sends humanitarian aid to Syria and helps win back the territory from terrorists, said this young cadet. He's parroting the Kremlin's message about why Russians should feel pride for supporting Bashar al-Assad's regime in Syria and helping defeat the Islamic State. Who else will protect the rest of the world if not Russia, said an obviously proud Elena Chekhanova. To protect a neighbor, only Russia is capable of that. On board the train are tanks, rocket launchers, and small arms, all providing a vivid illustration of the ferocity and complexity of the Syrian battlefield.
Have a look at this. This is a former UN vehicle, in fact, that, as we understand it, used to patrol the Golan Heights. but somehow ended up in the hands of Syrian opposition forces and then was captured by ISIS and has now been recaptured and put on this train. It's fair to say the equipment on the train represents an accurate portrayal of what we saw when our crew visited Syria's desert in 2017. Russia's military took us to a captured Islamic State factory where tanks had been modified and packed with explosives for suicide missions. This is the terrorist technique, said the soldier, noting the extra armor plating that was added so this vehicle could ram checkpoints. Still, the narrative that comes with the trophy train is right out of the Kremlin's propaganda talking points. This military equipment will show, said Major General Yuri Yevdoshenko, the international level of help for the terrorists. He's telling the crowd that Western countries aided terrorism and the Islamic State, and there's no mention of Western claims that Russian airstrikes killed thousands of Syrian civilians and propped up a murderous regime. Some of this equipment, in fact, may never have been used by the Islamic State. Take this converted Toyota Land Cruiser. The lettering here suggests, in fact, that it was once the property of one of the many Western-backed rebel groups that was fighting the Assad regime. One of the more egregious examples of distortion is the so-called chemical weapons display inside one of the train cars. This lab was found in April 2018 by residents after fighters were driven out of the city, said the soldier. That's a likely reference to the gas attack in Douma, near Damascus, around the same time that left 70 people dead. Much of the world blames Assad's forces for the attack, and the UN agency that investigated said it found no evidence to support Russia's claims that opposition fighters were behind it. But many Russians here accepted what they were told. I understand the terrorists use this, said Vladimir Gosev. Others, such as Irina Kasnikina, who teaches English in Yaroslavl, were more skeptical.
For Russians, it is maybe to increase their enthusiasm and to support our authorities, maybe, but war is war.
This tour comes at a time when Russian support for military missions overseas is decidedly mixed.
Almost every third of Russian said that it brought nor good nor harm.
Independent pollster Stepan Goncharov says with a weak economy, Russians are lukewarm at best to the Syria mission, as they don't see what economic gain it brings.
They understand that government should spend money more inside Russia than outside, and this is the main point for them.
Whether or not the Syria train won over any skeptics, it did draw good crowds, so it accomplished at least part of its mission. Human rights groups and Western governments will continue to argue with Russia over the rest. Chris Brown, CBC News in Yaroslavl.
Next on The National, protecting their classroom at all costs. Students willing to stand up to a gunman. That's in our moment.
She was crying and everything. She was saying, why would he do that? Because that's him. Why? I wish he wouldn't do that.
There used to be a time when the difference between the United States and Canada was defined not so much by Medicare or gun laws, but by a much simpler measure, beer. Ours was good. Theirs we considered as fit for nothing much more than a chamber pot. Every Canadian, except perhaps members of the Women's Christian Temperance Union, knew that. Now it looks, though, as if we're about to have a beer war with Americans. Not over quality, of course, just bucks. The dispute is about an international ruling that our provinces discriminate illegally against foreign brewers. For starters, Ontario stopped the flow of American beer after Washington threatened to shut out Canadian brews with punitive duties. This beer brawl could bring us something that the disputes about fish and lumber and cars never did. A border closed both ways to a product by a barrage of tit-for-tat duties. And even if it is settled, it could just bring us a war of another kind, a battle of the brewers. American breweries are all set to invade Canada the moment our beer rules are loosened. Given their marketing savvy and megabucks, that ultimate trade barrier, our taste buds, may not be enough to save our own savory suds. After all, some of the American brands that have already trickled into Canada have become household words. What we used to dismiss as too watery and gassy is now being hailed as light and lively. If Washington gets its way, the competition is likely to be more a matter of price than taste. In such wars, the cheap usually drives out the good. If the brews we grew up with should go the way of Canadian hockey supremacy, it would, to a great extent, be our own fault. Our uptight, fear of booze, drinking laws created provincial distribution systems that were closed, cumbersome, costly, and unfair. That it should take the Americans using international law to force us to open our provincial markets to beers from other parts of Canada is a measure of our myopic parochialism. Now Ottawa is trying to get Canadian brewers a 3-year grace period to prepare for the new competition. Washington has countered with steamroller tactics to force open Canadian markets now and thus give its brewers a jump on ours. All this, of course, is being done by the Americans in the name of free and fair trade, which is quite funny, considering that their beer market, too, is encrusted with protectionism. Yet, one way or another, it now seems likely that the Americans will get to Schlitz, Canada's thirsty throats. Joe Schlesinger, CBC News, Ottawa.
The dispute began 2 years ago when American brewers launched a trade action against Canada in the United States. A panel of the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade subsequently ruled that Canadian beer practices did discriminate against American breweries. By Friday, 2 main issues remained in the dispute. One centered on when Canada would open its beer markets to the Americans. The Americans were pushing for next spring, and the Canadians wanted to wait until the spring of 1994. The Americans were also seeking to eliminate the Canadian practice of minimum pricing, where provincial liquor boards marked up the price of American beer to match Canadian prices. But in the wake of recent Canada-U.S. trade disputes over lumber and Honda Civics, the Bush administration is said to have intervened in the beer dispute at the last minute, wanting to avoid further sour feelings between the United States and its biggest trading partners. The talks to find a solution continued late into Friday night.
Tonight, we're learning more details about the latest deadly school shooting in the U.S., including the many acts of bravery that took place. One student, Kendrick Castillo, died lunging at the gunman. The others say they were ready to do the same. So in tonight's moment, we ask why these students were prepared to lose it all in order to protect their classmates.
My wife and I knew right away that it was something that he would do. In fact, you know, and she was crying and everything. She was saying, why would he do that? But that's him. Why? I wish he wouldn't do that. But that's Kendrick. That's a Kendrick thing. He would not let somebody get hurt. If he had anything to do with it. If he had to be there to protect somebody, that's what he was going to do.
But his son wasn't the only one trying to save lives. 12-year-old Nate Hawley was also ready to stand up to the gunman.
I had my hand on the metal baseball bat, just in case. I was going to go down fighting if I was going to go down.
The fact that my 12-year-old has to tell you that, and everyone else that, the situation that he went through. I certainly couldn't have done it when I was his age.
Yeah, and Ian, both accounts so sad, right? I mean, Kendrick's case clearly, but I mean that any 12-year-old would be contemplating how to fight off a gunman and actually be prepared to do it. It is hard to put yourself in his shoes.
And Andrew, we despair about these school shootings. What is it that makes a society have so many of these? But at the same time, there is something to celebrate, and that is that, Kendrick Castillo, an 18-year-old high school student, Riley Howell, he was the student in North Carolina University. Both of those young men just decided when they saw a gunman to go there and wrestle the gunman to the ground. They got killed. They saved their classmates. That's an extraordinary thing. That is the National for Wednesday, May 8th. Good night.
Good night.